Have you ever wanted to learn more about the history of the U.S. military? If so, I have a history lesson for you. The most important thing I hope you get from this speech is that learning history will help us to understand signs so that history does not repeat itself. Today I will explain the D-Day landings of World War II on June 6, 1944. I'm a history buff and a member of the U.S. military, so I find a lot of joy learning and teaching U.S. military history. Today I will be talking about these three main points: who was involved in the conflict, why the Allied forces were invading Normandy, and how were the Allied forces able to take the beaches. The Allied forces had to secure Normandy to begin the fall and to reclaim most of Europe after Germany had attacked and claimed the continent. First, let's talk about who was involved in the conflict. Starting the lineup is the English and Canadians. The English and Canadians had fought to stop the advance of the Germans earlier in the war. Because of their failure to do so, they were very motivated to reclaim the countries that they had lost to the Germans. Second off, we have the Americans. The Americans were there to assist the British and Canadians with reclaiming Europe. After Pearl Harbor, the U.S. declared war on Japan, which was allies with Germany, thus making Germany our opponent. And last up to bat, we have the Germans. The Germans wanted to conquer all of Europe and had been very successful until the Allied invasion of Normandy. Now that you know who invaded Normandy, here is why. The Allies needed a way to get troops back on the continent. They couldn't just airdrop everything back then, so they knew that they would have to create ports to bring tanks and trucks onto shore. The Allies knew that they needed to create a dock system for transportation purposes, so they had pre-made floating docks so that they could create a dock and port network that would make it relatively easy to transport equipment once Normandy was secured. The Battle of Normandy would be considered the U.S.'s entry into the Atlantic theater of World War II. Now that we know who and why, here's how the Allies took Normandy. Now, let's learn about how they accomplished that daunting task. First was the planning phase of the operation. There was a lot of planning that went into the invasion of Normandy, such as the pre-built docks, the fake blow-up armies to make the Germans think that the invasion would be at a different location, and the airdrop of Allied troops behind enemy lines the night before the invasion. Next came the execution of the invasion. The Americans stormed Omaha and Utah beaches on the western front, while the British and Canadians stormed Gold, Juno, and Sword beaches. There was constant gunfire as the Allied troops pushed up the beaches, with constant artillery and infantrymen firing upon them. The beach was defended by battle-hardened German troops. In the end, the Allies were victorious and were able to continue through Europe. After the invasion was over, the Allies created a supply chain and began clearing nearby towns. The brave men who fought for the freedom of the free world and the lessons they taught us will never be forgotten. In review, first, we covered what countries were involved in the conflict. Second, we introduced their reasons for attacking. And finally, we covered how the invasion went along with some pre- and post-invasion information. Now you can better understand why the D-Day landings were so important. History is important to all those who wish to learn. We must learn from those who have lived before us so that we do not make the same mistakes they did. The Allied forces should have banded together before the fall of the European continent. This bloodbath of an invasion would have been completely avoidable if we would have known then what we know now. Thank you for your time.